Okay, chapter 8, section 2, 8.2. And we're talking about multiplying a polynomial by a monomial. So we talked about adding and subtracting them in our last lesson. Now we're talking about multiplying one polynomial by a monomial. So the big thing we're going to do, and then we're going to solve equations, as our objective says. We're going to learn how to multiply, and then we're going to solve equations using those products. So first we have to kind of review the distributive property, which we should kind of know when we see parentheses. That's going to easily tell us that we have to distribute. So in this case here, we've got a times b plus c minus d. You know, you'd go a times b, a times c, and a times negative d. So a times b would give us ab. A times c would be a plus ac, and then a times the negative d would be a minus ad. We should be good at distributing at this point. Okay, so multiplying a polynomial by a monomial is going to be very similar, except you're going to have some variables and some variables squared and some exponents and things like that in there. So the first thing you want to do is you want to use the distributive property. That's if it's there. If you see parentheses, we're going to have to use the distributive property. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to use properties of exponents if needed. If we have to add exponents when we're multiplying, or if we're dividing them, we have to subtract, or powers to powers, we multiply, things like that. And then combine like terms. That should always be an issue. We're always going to combine like terms. You know, just make sure we do that on each, and keep their terms together. And then the final thing, we're going to write our answer in standard form, which we're going to say this over and over. The answer should be in standard form, which is descending order. Remember, descending order with the highest exponent, then the next highest, and the next highest, and the next highest. So make sure our answers are like that. Okay. So first thing here, we're going to try with number 1 here. We've got, you can see the parentheses, so we know we have to distribute. So we've got 2x times 4x squared. So this is a monomial here. And then over here, we've got a trinomial, because there's 1, 2, 3 things. This is a monomial times a trinomial. Okay. And so if we just take a look at that first one, 2x times 4x squared. Just remember how we do this. Okay. Don't get confused with these numbers and letters. We just kind of keep them separate. In this case, we go 2 times 4 would give us our 8. 2 times 4 would be 8. Right? And then we've got x times x squared. So remember, we multiply the same base number, we'd add those exponents. So this would be 8x to the third. 8x to the third power. Because there's a 1 here, plus this 2 will give us x to the third. Okay? So let's go ahead and do the next one. 2x times 3x. Well, we should know that. 2 times 3 is 6. And then x times x is x squared. Okay? And then we've got 2x times negative 5, which we know would be a negative 10. And since we don't have any like terms, we've got a x cubed and x squared and a constant. We don't have any like terms to combine. We're already in descending order. That's our answer. We're done with that one. Right there, we are good. Okay, so that's a simple way to do it. Let's get to one where we have to do some combining like terms. So let's skip ahead to number 3 here. We're going to do a lot of W's here. We may have to combine like terms. So let's go ahead and a lot of distributing. We got 2 separate distributing situations because we got 2 separate parenthesis groups. So let's use this first one over here. 3w times 6w is going to give us an 18w squared. Don't forget to add those exponents. You got a 1 and a 1 there, makes 18w squared. And then 3w times a negative 4 is going to give us negative 12w. Okay. Now we're going to go on to the second set over here. So in this one, we've got a 2 times a w squared is going to be a 2w squared. And just remember, they all need a sign in front of them, a positive or a negative. Every term does. If it doesn't have one, then we assume it's positive, like this 3w. Okay. Now we go 2 times negative 3w gives us a negative 6w. And then we've got a 2 times 5 gives us a positive 10. Okay. So the next step, we distributed. Now we look for any, and we use our properties of exponents while we distributed. Now we look to combine like terms. Do we have any terms that we can combine? Well, sure. We've got an 18w squared here, and we've got a 2w squared here. So we could combine those. 18 plus 2 would give us 20w squared. Okay. We also have a negative 12w and a negative 6w that we can combine. And together we'd have negative 12w and negative 6w would give us negative 18w. And then this number, this little 10 over here, doesn't have anyone to combine with, so we just bring it down as part of the answer, plus 10. And then we would be done. 20w squared minus 18w plus 10. Okay, so that's the multiplication. Really just distribute. If you can distribute and combine like terms, then you're in good shape for this section. Let's talk about solving an equation now with polynomials. So now we're going to go ahead and distribute and multiply if we need to, and then we're actually going to solve an equation. So there's going to be an equal sign here, and your answer should be, you'll get a variable equals something. So the first thing, same thing. If you need to distribute, if there's parentheses, distribute. The next thing, we're going to combine like terms on each side of the equation. And I can't stress that enough, that you go on each side, combine like terms first. And then, just like any other algebra problem, we're going to use inverse operations to solve the equation. Do the opposite. If it's adding, subtract it. If it's subtracting, add it. And multiply, divide, all that stuff. Just like solving equations. Okay? So, let's go ahead and do an example of this one. Let's go ahead and do number 6 and 8 today. All right, on number 6, I see two sets of parentheses, so we're going to have distributing on each side. So let's go ahead and say b times 12. We know that's going to be 12b. And then we've got b times b. That's just b squared. Don't add numbers in there if you don't need to. It's not 2b. It's 1 times 1, basically. We've got a 1 here and a 1 here. It's 1 times 1, which is 1. But you've got to add the exponents on those b's, so it's plus b squared. And then we've got the minus 14 there. And then we have our equal sign. So let's try the other side now. I've got, let's distribute here first. So I'm going to keep this 2b. And now I'm going to distribute. b times a negative 4 is negative 4b. And then b times b again is going to be a plus b squared. Okay, let's see if I can move all this stuff over a little bit for us. Give us a little more room. Just rewrite that. Okay, so I've distributed. Now it's time to combine like terms. And we're going to do this on each side. So I'm going to put a little shade here, and let's go ahead and do this side first. Okay, do we see any terms that need to be combined? Well, sure. We've got this 2b here and a negative 4b here. So we've got 2b and negative 4b. That's going to give us a negative 6b. Or excuse me, I'm sorry. We got 2b and a negative 4b. That's going to give us a negative 2b. And then this b squared is going to come along with it. Okay, now let's make sure that we combine on the other side as well. I just take it side by side. I already did that there. Okay, and now over here, do we have anything to combine? No, we don't. So we're just going to stay the same. 12b plus b squared minus 14. Okay, so I just take it side by side and combine like terms first. Now I can start to use inverse operations. And so since we know we're going to have to write it in standard form, let's go ahead and utilize those b squareds first. So let's go ahead and get rid of those or subtract it. So I want to subtract b squared because it's doing the opposite, inverse operation. And I'm going to subtract b squared here. Well, what happens to our b squareds? That's pretty nice, isn't it? They go away. That's going to cancel. That's going to cancel. And now we don't have to deal with that. Okay? So now we're left with 12b minus 14 equals negative 2b. And now, again, I want to get my letters on one side and numbers on the right. And letters on one side, numbers on the others, variables on one side, numbers on the others, whatever you want to say it. And I know we've talked about a rule of thumb is getting your letters on the left. You don't have to if you know the faster way, or you can get the numbers on the right. Go for it, or the letters on the right. But I'm going to put the numbers on the left just because that's kind of how we talked about doing it. So I'm going to add 2b to both sides, and it's probably going to take one extra step because of that, but that's okay. Add 2b to both sides. And that's going to cancel out that 2b's here. So now I'm going to have a 14b, because 2b plus 12b is 14b, minus 14 equals, this is going to be 0, right? It's going to cancel out to be 0. And then we know that I just have to go add 14 to both sides here. And so now I'm going to have 14b equals 14. And I think at this point, we know that if I divide by 14 here, I'm going to get b to be equal to 1. Okay, so my answer is going to have, I'm actually going to have a variable equals something. So b equals something when I'm solving. That's the key. Okay, let's go ahead and do number 8 here. All right, so again, two distributives going on, one on each side. So 2 times 5a, it's going to give me a 10a. 2 times negative 12 is going to be a negative 24. And on this side, I've got a negative 6 times 2a is going to be a negative 12a. Negative 6 times negative 3.
Madison Pollock, please report to the main office. Madison Pollock to the main office, please. Thank you.
That gives us a plus 18. And then I can throw this plus 2 down there as well. So again, looking at terms to combine, I'm going to take it one side at a time. So let's take a look at that left side. Anything to combine over here? No, they're not. One has a variable, one doesn't. So we're good there. How about the other side? Yep, there is one. We can combine this 18 and this 2 to make 20. So I have negative 12. So I have negative 12a plus 20 on the right side, and the left side is going to stay the same, 10a minus 24. So now, again, I want to get variables on the left, numbers on the other, or vice versa, whatever works easiest for you. If you're good at solving equations, you could probably do it the other way. But I'm going to add 12a to both sides. That's going to cancel it over here on the right, and on the left side, I'm going to have 22a. Same thing I'm going to do now is, and I've got now a minus 24 equals 20, because we're solving equations. I should get an answer that says a equals something. And so now I'm going to go ahead and add 24 to both sides, so I get my numbers on the opposite side. That is going to cancel these 24s out. So now I have 22a equals 44. And then I go ahead and divide, because that's the inverse operation. Divide by 22 to isolate a by itself, and you should get a equals 2. Okay? Check my math, but I think I'm right there. Good. So it really comes down to being able to distribute and then combine like terms. If you can do that, then you're in good shape for this section. All right, the lesson summary here. What is the trickiest thing to remember when you're multiplying polynomials? It's an opinion-based question, what you think the trickiest part is. And then a practice problem here. Solve this. I see 2 sets of parentheses, so you'll have some 2 distributing to do. And see if you can solve it for a. You should get, it says solve, and it's an equation. There's an equal sign here. So you should have an answer that says a equals something. Okay? That's it for today. Hope you enjoyed that, and then we will come back, answer any questions you got when I see you again. Thanks. Bye.